Hello, and welcome to the OutSystems YouTube channel. My name is Rodrigo, and today I'm going to be talking about Agentic AI. And for that, I'm going to build an application to help me manage my calendar. It will look into my appointments and understand if it's an internal meeting, a one-on-one, or a customer meeting. If it's a customer meeting, it will look into the information I have about this account, about email threads I had related to that account, and give me a summary information so that I can go very well prepared to the meeting. So let's get started. I'm going to use AI. I'm going to type in a prompt with the description of the application that I want. And now I get this option of changing the results from AI. So I'm just going to remove the users. I'm going to click generate and I'll wait a few seconds and I have an application ready to go. But of course I can customize it so I can check if everything is all right and I can get AI suggestions to change my app. In this case, I want something new. I want some notes. But actually, so this is a bit too much on the notes, but of course now I can edit and change everything that I want and Mentor will adjust the application automatically. Once I'm ready, I can test the application, I can see the result of what I did, and all of this has sample data so that I can see the application properly working. Because I'm using the application to manage my calendar, I need to get the data from my appointments. And I'm using Google Calendar. So what I need to do is go to the Google console. I'm going to create a new project and I'm going to give it just any name. And now I can select that project and I need to give it permission to access the Google Calendar APIs. So I'm just going to go and search for Google Calendar and I'm going to enable those APIs. Once that's done, I can go to the permissions and to the credentials, and I will create a service account. Again, I'm just going to select any email, and I'm going to leave the other options open. I'm create this service account, and now I'll need to generate a key. And the key will give me a JSON that has all the information that I need to then configure the access to the calendar. So next, I need to take my service account and I need to share my calendar with that service account so that then I can access and change my calendar at will. So I just set the permissions, allow to do the changes, I click go, and we're ready. With the permissions set, we can now use Google Calendar in our application. So what we're going to do is we're going to open the application in Odyssey Studio. We can do this because it's compatible with Mentor, and we'll add a reference to the generate GWT to build the token, and we'll add some references to manipulate the Google Calendar. Once that's done, we are going to create the REST call to go to auth2 from Google. And for that, we just need to create a REST API with a single method using the proper URL. It's a post method. And we can copy paste from the documentation what we need to send to the method. And we can copy the result so that then Odyssey Studio can generate the output structures. To make our lives easier, we are going to create a function that will give us the Google token so that we can access the calendar methods. So we are going to create the server action. We're going to call it get Google token. It will output a token and we are going to turn it into a function. Now, what this will do is it's going to generate a GWT from a string. So we're going to get the information from the JSON we downloaded earlier, and we're going to fill the arguments of the function. For the scope, we'll access the documentation from Google and understand what scope we need, which in this case is the calendar. Note that the PEM string needs to be a base 64 string. On the JSON, you have /n's to represent carriage returns, so you need to properly format it and then copy it back into the Odyssey Studio expression. Next, you can call the token function from Google from the REST API that you configured with the parameters that you get in the documentation. The last step is just to assign to the token the value that you got from the REST API. So now we're ready to build a function that updates our Google Meetings. And so what we'll do is we're going to create a server action called update Google Meetings. And what this will do is it will get the calendar event list. So we're going to call the reference. Our calendar is Arden Tommy. We're just going to get 10 results to make this simple. And we are going to get results 1 month in the future. So we'll use this function to prepare this, and 3 days in the past. So that's the time range that we'll get. We set some other parameters. Here, we don't use the page token, so we're going to set it to empty because we're not paginating. And finally, we're going to use the function we built earlier to get the Google token for the authentication. So now that we have the event list, we can iterate this list using a for each node. And we're going to create another function, and this will update an individual meeting. That will be the goal of this. So it will take an event item and it will update it. And so this is what we'll call in our iteration. We'll just update each meeting individually. And finally, we're going to have another function that will clean the old meetings. So it will clean up anything that was deleted, and we'll define that in a minute. Now we can fill up the body of the update meeting details function. And what we want to do first is to do an aggregate that gets the meeting. But we'll add two extra attributes to the meeting. One of them is the Google ID. The other one is a flag to say if the meeting was updated or not. This will help us in the future. So we just go get it, and we add a filter where we compare the Google ID of the function with what was sent in the argument. Next, we'll just add a meeting variable, and we'll put all the default values just like they came from the database. But the nuance is that for the meeting status and for the meeting type ID, we'll make sure that if the meeting already exists, we are using the values that were on the database. Okay, so next, I'm just going to adjust the meeting types because these were the ones that were created automatically for me, but I want something different. So again, you can change everything that AI has done. You are completely in control. So let's just put this once to make sure we don't have errors. Excellent. And now here's the full body of the function. I don't want to bug you with all the details, but essentially what we are doing is if this is an existing meeting, I just delete all the participants and then I recreate the participants based on their email. The next step that I need to do is actually create an event that signals that a new meeting was created. And then in my function, what I'll do is I'll make sure that whenever a new meeting is created, I launch that event. We can now take care of the clean old meetings function, but for that, we need to make sure that we set the updated flag to true when we update meetings. Because what we will do in the body of the clean old meetings function is we'll have an aggregate that will get all the meetings that were not updated. Make sure you remove any references to other entities here because sample data might not have this. So to make sure you delete everything that's old. And now you can iterate these meetings and just delete all the content. So we will need to delete all participants in the meeting. We will need to delete all notes in the meeting, and then we can delete the meeting itself. The next thing we want to do is actually reset the updated flag. So again, we can use an advanced SQL node, and we'll just go to every meeting and set updated to false. In a real scenario, we would take this update meetings function and we would call it in a regular basis. But because this is an example and we want to try it out, what I'll do is I'm going to create interface to invoke this function. So I will go to the meeting screen and I'll just put here a container just for arrangement issues, so to make it more beautiful. And I'm going to add a button that will allow me to call the update meetings function. And so what I need to do is just call the function that I created earlier, and then I will add a message just to tell me that everything went fine. And finally, what I need to do is update the list on the screen with the new meetings. Now, earlier on, when I changed the static entity with the meeting types, I broke the screen. So I'm just going to fix it really quick, and I'm going to put the new values that I created. And once that's done, we are now ready to publish the application. With the application published, we can now run it on the browser and make sure everything is working nice. So I'm going to log in with one of the sample users. I'm going to go to the meetings. I will click the update meetings. We have a success message, and you can see that the old stuff was deleted. And if I go to my calendar, you can see that I have here the 5 meetings that showed up on screen. So now we're finally ready to use AI in our application. And for that, we are going to use AI Agent Builder. We are going to create an agent that uses the GPT-4 model, and we are going to ask it to classify our meetings in one-on-one, internal meeting, customer meeting, and so on. We're also asking it to give the result in JSON, and a tip, we are going to ask for a reason why it classified that way. That will help us debug if needed. And now, one of the cool things about AI Agent Builder is that you can use it as a playground. So I'm going to put a prompt here to make sure that the agent I'm building gives the right results. Next, I just save my agent, give it a name, and I can use this ID in ODC Studio. All right, so back in ODC Studio, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a service action as an agent wrapper. And so this is going to take a meeting ID and it will output a customer name, and it's going also to output the meeting type ID. And for that, I'm going to fetch all the data that I already have regarding the meeting, and I'm going to create a reference to call agent from AI Agent Builder. This is the action that allows me to actually go and using the agent ID, so the name I defined earlier, plus setting up the sender of the message as a user, and now I can send the prompt, whatever prompt I want. So we're going to use the same thing that we use when we test it. And what this will do is it's going to return a response in JSON. So I'm going to need to deserialize it. And for the data type, ODC Studio has this great capability that allows me to create a data type based on JSON. So I can go back to AI Agent Builder, copy the JSON, put it here, and everything is created automatically for me. So I'm just going to give it a name. I'm going to tell JSON to deserialize for that type. And now I'm ready to set the customer name to whatever comes back from the response, and the same thing for the meeting type. Now, because I want to have strongly type, what I'm going to do is I'm going to parse the type that it's coming from JSON, which is a string, and depending on what comes, I'm going to say it's an unknown if I don't know about it, or if this is the same as customer, I'm going to assign customer, and if it's the same as internal, I'm going to put internal. If it's one-on-one, I'm just going to set to one-on-one. Because I'm going to use this in the workflow, I also want to store information. And for that, what I need to do is create another service action. And what this will do is it will add whatever I come up in my workflow into my meeting notes. So this will just take a meeting ID and a meeting type ID, and I'm going to go fetch the meeting from the database, set the type, update the meeting, and that's done. The proper way to invoke these actions would be to have a timer or something like that that runs from time to time. But because this is a test, I'm going to create a UI that will allow me within the meeting to invoke this recalculate. So I'm just going to add a button. I'm going to call it recalculate. And what this will do is it's going to invoke a server action because I want to raise an event. This needs to be done on the server. So this action will take an argument, which is the meeting ID. And now I can just call the meeting created event. And this will trigger the workflow that we want to trigger. And then I'm just going to put here a message so that we know that something happened and we're ready to go. Now that we have everything ready, we can finally do our workflow. And for that, what we'll do is we'll go to the ODC portal. And from the ODC portal, you can select create a new workflow. And we'll just pick a name, process calendar. And this workflow will be triggered when a new meeting is created. And once that happens, what we want to do is call our wrapper that will understand the meeting type and the customer name. So we'll send it the meeting ID, and this will be the return parameters. So change the name to make it clear, and now we're going to add a decision. So this allows us to have different behaviors if it's a one-on-one or if it's something else. Now, if it's a one-on-one, what we want to do is just save that type. And now we have the wrapper we created earlier to save that information. And if it's something else, we're just going to say it's an unknown meeting. And this is the first version of our workflow. Let's publish. We can now try the application by opening it in the browser. And I'm going to go in as the default user, as the sample user. I'm going to go to a one-on-one with Alex and click recalculate. I can now go back to ODC portal and look at the instances of the process. So I can see exactly what is going on, and I can see that the process went exactly as expected. I can also check in the application. So if I refresh, you can see that the meeting was marked as one-on-one. The agent we just built was very simple. We just asked it a question and it gave an answer. We can make this a bit more elaborate by sending OutSystems data. Now, to do that, the first thing that we need to do is to mark the entities we want to use as public. So you need to do this and then publish the application. From that moment onward, you can go to AI Agent Builder and create a new data source. So you can see some data sources already here. I'm going to create a new one with my application data. You give it a name, and then you can select whatever tables you want from your application as long as they're public. You save the data source and it's ready to be used. So the next step is to create an agent. And for this agent, we'll use a different model. We use Claude, and we want to act it as a meeting planner. And then you can give the prompt. So the prompt gives the rules plus the output we want in JSON. And finally, you set the data that you want to use. Let's try it out with the one-on-one with Alex to see the result. And it seems that we have what we want. So now we can just save our agent. We give a name to use in Odyssey Studio, and we are ready to build our wrapper like we did before. So now I'm going to create the service action to call my follow-up meeting agent. So I'm just going to create this function. It will take the meeting ID and it will output if I should book a meeting. So this is a Boolean, and the start and end times. Note that these are actually date times. Make sure to set that type. So now I go and get the meeting. Based on that, I can call my follow-up agent. I'm just going to send it the meeting title. And I'm going to use the same trick again, where I'm going to use this JSON from my test earlier on to create the structure that will allow me to deserialize the response. So once that's ready, I can just assign the several outputs and I'm ready to go. I'm also going to create a server action to book the meeting. So this will take the meeting ID, it will take the start time, again, date time, and the end time, and I'm going to call an action from the calendar component that invokes Google Calendar actions. And now I can just create that event by sending it all the arguments, the title, description, and so on, by sending it the calendar ID, and I'm going to use get Google token again, the function we created earlier. With all that work done, I can go back to my workflow. And so now I can call my activity that determines if I should or not book a new meeting. So I'm going to call the follow-up meeting wrapper, and I'm going to send it the meeting ID, and now I can build the decision. So what this decision will do is if you decide you want to book a meeting, and I can test this because the book new is going to be set to true, I can now invoke the service action to book the meeting. And I'm going to send it, of course, the meeting ID. I always need to send that. I'm going to send the start time that I will get also from the rep, and I'll send it the end time. Once that's done, I can publish my workflow. And now I can test it. So I'm going to go to my one-on-one with Alex. I'm going to click recalculate. This will launch the create meeting event, which will launch an instance of my process, and I can see here I have process active. I'm going to refresh to see if it's finished, and now I can see it follow exactly the path that I wanted. And if I go back to my calendar and I advanced 1 week, I can see that I have here my new meeting with Alex. Excellent. We just created an agent that uses OutSystems data. But sometimes you also want to use data from other systems. For instance, you might have an S3 bucket with information, in this case, with email threads that are happening with the client. So if we take a look at one of these files, we can see this is an email discussion. What we need to do is index this information with Kendra, with Amazon Kendra, and then we will be able to use it in AI Agent Builder. For that, I create a new data source that connects with Kendra. I give it a name, whatever name you want, and I'm going to select the region, the index ID, the access key, and the secret, and I'm ready to go. Now I can create an agent, so I'm going to create a new one that will use the Claude data model. I'm going to ask it to act as an information gatherer, and the idea is to summarize the email threads that I have. Then you set up your data source. In this case, I'm going to put the email indexer that I just created, and now I can test out the prompt to make sure everything is working as expected. And you can see that now I have a summary of the emails that I can use. Next, just save your agent, give it whatever name you want. In this case, I'm going to call it email agent, and we're ready to go. Just like before, we are going to use a service action as a wrapper for this agent. So this wrapper will take the meeting ID, it will output a summary, and we're going to create a variable just to help us out with the list of emails we want to get. So now we need to get the meeting participants, and this will be the meeting participants for a specific meeting. And of course, now we need to also get the participants' information. Based on that, we're going to loop this information. And if this is not my email, and of course this should be coded, I'm going to add it to the emails list. Now the emails were set as email, so I just need to make sure it's a text. Then I just trim the last comma that I had on my emails, and I can call my agent with the same prompt that I had before. Once that's all done, I just set the summary and we're good to go. We support other data sources like Azure. So for instance, I have here a blob storage that contains information about all the accounts. This is information I got from Salesforce. You can see the type of info that's there. We have the name, the revenue, and we also have the opportunities and the interactions of a client. And what we did was we put an AI search on top of it. So we have this indexer on top of the blob storage. And if you're wondering how we got the information there, we actually have an application that takes all of the stuff in Salesforce and puts it in blob storage. And we do this because we have data fabric. So we have this Salesforce connector that makes this really easy to do. Now, with this available, we can start a new data source. It's going to be a Azure AI Search data source. Let's call it Salesforce data. You give the URL, the index name, the API key, and you're ready to go. So I'm going to now build another agent that it's going to use GPT-4. And what we want to do is to summarize the information about a customer. So I'm going to send it the Salesforce data. I just say the name of the customer, and the agent gives me a summary including past opportunities and any communications. Let's just save this agent. And just like before, we are going to create a wrapper for it. So we will go back to Odyssey Studio and we'll create this customer agent wrapper that will get the meeting. It will get the meeting notes to get the customer name. And based on the customer name, it will get a summary. So let's just publish this and it's ready to use. Okay, let's go back to our workflow and use the new capabilities we just created. And so the first thing we want to do is update this decision here and add a new condition. And this condition will check if this is a customer just by checking the meeting type ID. By the way, this needs to be the same as you have on the records. And if it's a customer, now we can execute a flow in parallel. So we will do both things at the same time. First, we are going to go and call the customer agent wrapper to get all the Salesforce summary. And then we will do the same thing for the emails for this specific meeting. One thing to notice is that I cannot use information from parallel flows in the common flow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save those. So I'm going to create two new attributes on my meeting notes entity, the email summary and the customer summary. And then I'm going to create the service action to store those in the database. And that essentially what it's going to do is I'm going to put the fields non-mandatory so that I can send one or the other. I'm going to get the meeting. If the email summary is not empty, I'm going to save it. I'm going to do the same for the customer summary. If it's not empty, I'm going to save it. And just setting the ID, update the meeting notes, and it's ready. And just before we call it a day, what we are going to do is create another agent that what it will do is going to use GPT-4 to take the information about the emails and the information about the customer and summarize it in something smaller, in just a couple of paragraphs. So I took the data that we had from the other examples, pasted here, and everything is shortened to just a couple of paragraphs. I'm going to save this agent and it's going to be ready to be used. And as usual, I'm going to create a wrapper for this where I just call the function and spit back the briefing. We also need to update the add meeting notes to also be able to save that briefing. And so let's just join here the meeting notes. And if the briefing is not empty, what I'm going to do is actually save them in the database. Cool, we can publish and we are ready to go back to our flow and use all of this. Just adding some housekeeping to make sure we understand what is going on. But now after getting the customer info, I'm going to save it to the database so that I can use it later on. And I'm going to do the same thing when I get the email info. So now I can go a bit down and I'm going to do two things. So the first one is to wrap the results, and second is to send that information to my meeting notes. Okay, great. So now we have the briefing. So what? Nobody wants to go to an application to check it out, right? So let's just add one more tweak, which is the ability to send this information through Slack. So I'm going to create a notify service action. I'm just going to use a component that we have available on the Forge to send Slack messages, and I will set the channel, and I'm just going to send the summary. I publish this, and now I can go back to my workflow and use this. But before, I actually need to set the access key, or else this will not work. But with that done, I can go back to my workflow, and I'm going to add here a notify. So once all of this is done, the user will have a Slack message with the summary of the emails and of the customer. Right, let's publish this, and we are ready to test this. So we go to our meetings, we have a meeting with Acme, we'll click recalculate. This will launch the workflow, and it's now active. We can see it's executing things in parallel. We can refresh, and we see that everything executed as we expected. So we save the information, and if we go to Slack, the information is there, and we have the briefing before we go to our customer meeting. Not only that, but if we go back to the application, you can see that the tag was updated, and I can even see in the dashboard that now I have a customer meeting on my dashboard. That was a lot, but we also achieved a lot. We have this complex workflow where we are using GPT-4 to get the type of a meeting, and based on that we take different actions like understanding if we need a follow-up by using Claude, or summarizing a bunch of emails using Kendra on top of an S3 bucket, or just getting the information from a customer by using Search AI on top of blob storage that gets information from Salesforce, until we finally take all of these pieces and we summarize it together again using GPT-4. And all of this is being managed by a workflow, which is an awesome way to make sure that you understand what's happening with your agents, to be able to track the execution and understand why something goes one way or another without having complex debugging sessions on top of AI agents. So we believe that this combination between workflows and agents is really the way to go when you have complex scenarios like this. I hope you enjoyed the video and that it was useful. I would love to hear from you on your use cases and all the innovations you are doing with AI and workflows. Be sure to put a note on the comments, and I'll be seeing you soon.